Hi, everybody. This is Gaynor Meilke, and this is Moving the Needle, our YouTube series that's devoted to digital transformation for accounting firms. And I want to say hi to John, my co-host.
Hello, Gaynor. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Just working through the holiday season here.
All right, excellent. And so, John, do you want to just give a little overview of what you're doing at Higgins Advisory these days?
Sure. Yes. So Higgins Advisory is basically a one-person operation, which is myself. And what I do is I focus on helping CPAs to, first of all, understand emerging technologies that impact them, and then explain and help them understand how to apply it in their day-to-day work. So that's basically, and I do a lot of public speaking and also a lot of webinar presentations and such.
Yeah, so you can catch John on CPA Academy, CPA Crossing, state societies, AICPA. You're all over the place, and you talk to a lot of firms. And I know the last couple of episodes we talked to some firm owners as well about what they were doing in tax, and that brings us to this tax six pack that we're creating here. This is the first part of the tax season 2024, 2025, depending on how you parse that in your firm, whether it's 2024 returns or the 2025 year. So this episode, we're going to kind of give you an overview of what you can expect in the next five. And with John's expertise in all of the digital tools that are out there to help specifically in tax, and then I'm helping to kind of glue it all together from the strategy and business side into advisory. I think this will be a great series that you can get some good ideas that you can implement now and then look to the future of how you need to shift both internally and externally with your clients to adjust to this super rapid transformation that's happening. So, John, do you want to speak a little bit to that? Just, where we are with the state of AI and tax and digital transformation and tax.
Yeah, and for those of you who may be listening to us for the first time, so Gaynor and I have started this YouTube channel. We basically title it "Moving the Needle," which is focusing on helping you to move your needle in your journey of digital transformation. And so we do different topic segments. We did a group of sessions on AI, how to apply AI in your practice, and then Gaynor came up with a great idea. Let's have the tax six pack. And we were just discussing offline, is that the tax six pack abs or is it the tax six pack of beer? But so the idea is really to get you fit, get your tax services fit. And to that point, we have this tax six pack series. So this one is just to kind of kick it off and introduce you to what we're going to try to cover in the next series of these sessions that we're having. So, to that point, want to just kind of start with, I have a little slide I want to share with you to look at the tax services workflow model at a kind of a macro level, and then talk about how you can plug in different levels of automation. So let me just go ahead and share my screen here. There we go. All righty. So don't be overwhelmed by this slide, but as we said earlier, I do a lot of presentations, work with a lot of firms, and when it comes to applying technology, whether it's audit, accounting, and in this case, tax, a good starting point is just to really kind of lay out your workflow. And so this is kind of a macro level workflow that covers tax services. And at the top of the workflow, we've got engagement management. Whatever type of client service you're offering, we always have the issue of engagement management. So many tools out there today. I would even argue maybe there's too many tools out there today to help you automate the various aspects of managing your engagements. And we'll come back to that. And then I have two columns, basically two buckets of tax services. On the right-hand side, let's start there. We have tax preparation or tax compliance, whether it's 1040s or business returns, doesn't really matter. Obviously, the process is a little bit different, but then breaking down the tax prep process, three big buckets. We have to collect the client data, we have to organize that client data, and we have to somehow get it into the tax software. Then we actually use the tax software, the tax prep software, to prepare and process the return. And then we have to go through the process of delivering the return, getting it signed off and delivered. So, you can look at that in your firm and start to say, okay, let's lay this out. Maybe you go into more detail than what I have here in these buckets. More buckets makes it easier, I think, to figure out what are the opportunities to apply automation. And I just gave some examples in the callouts there on the right. So, of course, client tax organizers. We're going to be having an interview with Dan Barinholtz of Stanford Tax in one of our sessions. The folks at Stanford Tax have come up with a really innovative way to automate the document collection for 1040 tax returns. So I would encourage you to tune in for that session. It'll be coming up here shortly. And then, of course, you have the tax prep software. We don't need to spend a lot of time on that in these YouTube podcasts, because most of you already have tax. Well, you all have tax prep software. Most of you are probably happy with what you have. Even if you're not happy, we all know that changing is a big task. Going from one 1040 prep application to another is no small task. So anyways, I don't want to go into too much detail here, but the idea is just to give you the big picture and help you think about, all right, let's take our tax services and, lay them out, and let's look at what tools we have today and where are the bottlenecks. And wherever you identify a bottleneck, that's when you got to stop and think about, okay, where can I apply some technology, whether it's AI or some of the other tools that are out there in the marketplace.
So I
I
have a
mean,
question for you, John,
yeah.
just as we were looking at this. Do you foresee the day where a firm could just have a client name and maybe their social security number and plug it into some kind of AI tool and the rest is taken care of?
I could see that. I could visualize that. I don't think that's anywhere in the near term,
Mhm.
Gaynor. And I think it makes us all a little uneasy when we see this, when we think about that, right? Just how much this can be automated. It's kind of similar to when I talk about AI, generative AI, and relationship to spreadsheets. Yeah, I see a world where we don't have spreadsheets down the road. And that's
Mhm.
like when you talk about what's the impact of this digital transformation, and where do you need to get on the train, so to speak, is you got to think about things like that, that it could be a case where 5 years from now, we don't need Excel. Will that be the case? I don't know. Nobody knows the future, but I do know where this is all seems to be heading. And as I use like generative AI more and more, I think, well, gosh, why do I need to go in Excel to do that when I can just ask my question and give it the data, and it will, just without me having to build a bunch of formulas, for example, it'll do
Mhm.
the calculation for me.
Mhm.
But it's baby steps. There's a lot of opportunity today for firms to just take their current processes, use tools that they're already aware of, and just further automate what you're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Right. And I know you and I talked about also just, in previous episodes, what the client trust factor is as well with AI, and that something that has to be addressed too, just because you can do all of this in your firm, also think about if your client starts asking questions about, are you actually reviewing these things and that because I see that coming as well. I mean, there's a low trust factor for AI driven solutions out there in the general market. And I think for firms, accountants are trust sources for businesses and their clients. And so I think there's an opportunity to leverage AI and actually increase trust too. So it's not all just trying to take as much work out of the workflow as possible. It's about how can I free myself to get the basics, use my advisory skills the way everybody, says that they want to, and then deliver that high value information and strategy to my clients. So I think that's something that we'll cover in these episodes as well.
Yeah, I think the point about trust is key, Gainer, because a couple things. Your clients are going to come to you. They're going to come to us better educated, better informed, because they're going to
Mhm.
inform themselves by using AI. And so that means we're all going to have to up our game, right? Because they're going to come to us and ask us questions like, "Oh gosh, I didn't expect you to ask me that question." And so we have to, but we have to be. They're going to come to us because they want someone they can trust. They don't trust the technology. That will probably improve over time. specifically
Mhm.
AI technology. But in the meantime, they're going to say, okay, John, what do you think? Or John, what would you do as my CPA advisor? And so
Mhm.
speaking of advisory, that's our other bucket here on the slide is, you know, uh, and Gaynor and I have talked about this before, and we'll be talking about it throughout this series. We talked to some practitioners and such, is that now you have some really good tools to help you more easily get involved in client advisory services and just with more sophisticated tax research tools, more sophisticated tax planning tools, and the ability to use generative AI to help you to understand what is the client really going to be interested in learning from me? How can I best advise my client? And you can give it parameters about the client. Without sharing confidential information, like maybe it's a small owner of a small business owner of a car wash, or a small business owner of a restaurant, or maybe it's a doctor. And by having that information as part of your prompting in the AI, you'll be able to really hone in on, okay, what kind of advice would be best suited for this particular client. So, because that's always been the challenge. I've been in the profession a long time, Gaynor, and for many years, many years, I can't even tell you how many years, where I would go to conferences and say, you got to be more advisory, you got to be more advisory, you got to be more advisory. It always sounded good. It made sense to me. And my career has been all advisory. But for most CPAs, it's like, okay, that all sounds good, but how do I do it? I'm
Right.
really more focused as a technical person doing a tax services, doing tax work, doing audit work, and so on. How to become an advisor? Well, now you have a coach. With generative AI, that is your coach. You can go in and ask generative AI any question about, what would be a good kind of advisory services for me to offer as a tax professional? And
Mhm.
you could give it niches. What kind of information would be of interest to my clients? Just there's a whole process you can go through with generative AI to help you be a good advisor, and it becomes your mentor and coach in developing that service.
Yeah. Yeah, we were just talking about a book that I had heard about called The AI Driven Leader, and just how to use AI to basically kind of strategize for your business. And so I think that's also something that, firms can start looking at too, is you don't have to solve every problem like using, at least getting started with your like own brain power. It's like, play with the AI tools that you have and see what answers you get, and that can be a great, starting point too. But in this particular series, I know we've already um, have had a deep dive with some practitioners on how they're using AI specifically for tax prep and on the advisory side, with lots of highlights of the tools that they're using and kind of pros and cons as well. And I think that's an important piece of what we'll be covering. So, John, from your perspective, if you were going to give people sort of a high level top 5 to 10 things that you think they should be thinking about from a digital transformation standpoint in tax season right now, do you have a few that you could share with us?
Sure. I think that, again, it goes back to looking at your current workflows and where do you have the bottlenecks, or maybe not a bottleneck as so much as where you spend a lot of manual effort on. And I know, continue the process of gathering client documents and organizing them continues to be a challenge. You constantly hear practitioners saying, I can't get the client to fill out the organizer. And again, I just kind of would point you to be sure to watch the interview we're going to have with Dan Barinholtz from Stanford Tax, because just when you learn about how they've simplified that process, and there are other competitive products as well to that, but that can really be a time saver, not just in the way you collect the documents, but just having them really well organized as you go through the entire engagement. Then kind of on the outbound side, there's some really good tools out there like SafeSend to really help facilitate the return delivery process. So if
Mhm.
you're just doing email to deliver the tax returns, you really should look into a client portal, some type of client portal solution for delivering those returns in a more secure way. And the good news is your clients, I think they're definitely getting more comfortable with the technology because, as time goes on, especially as a result of the pandemic, we all had to learn how to do things, more in a virtual world. So inbound side, collecting and organizing documents, automating that, focusing on that, and on the outbound side, look at some of the tools to help automate the delivery of the tax returns. Then the third thing I would say in a kind of a big piece is on the advisory side. Just even start really small, like you can, and you have to be careful about making sure you know how to use the AI technology to protect your client's confidential data, but to be able to go in and say, hey, look at this tax return after I anonymize it for, I'm talking, to the AI application like ChatGPT, and give me some ideas of ways that I could communicate to the client some ideas for how they could reduce their tax burden next year. And I think if you just start exploring that and trying that, you'll be surprised. I really think you'll be surprised at just how good of a job the AI technology can do to give you some really good suggestions that you could share with the client. And so you can add advisory very incrementally. Ideally, you're going to want to add, you're adding value, so you should be generating more fees as a result of that. But just to put your toe in the water, just maybe show them that as part of delivering their 1040, you're giving them some additional information to them, and that's where they're going to see, a lot of value for sure.
Well, just to kind of chime in on some of the AI tools, I mean, we're hoping to get Tax GPT on here for an interview. There's some specific AI-driven engines for the profession that are coming up now too. So that's something to look at. And then on the whole tax flow automation side, I mean, Lisio is another tool. They really have like an end-to-end workflow. Canopy also has, they've got a tax transcripts module, which isn't AI driven, but what they have is an insights tool, which you can use for advisory purposes as well. So if you start looking at some of the solutions you already have, I know we had the conversation with a couple of our practitioners in future episodes about, like Thompson, and they sort of need to move their digital transformation down the road pretty quickly because there's an opportunity for another AI-driven tax platform to be developed and come in and be a game changer, I think, in the market.
Absolutely. And that really brings out a point that, just to kind of give a shameless plug for these YouTube videos that we're doing, is that we hope to have a lot of executives from the different technology companies, and we can ask them, Gaynor and I can ask them the questions that they might not always just come out and offer that information. We want to be very objective in how we show you these products to you, these solutions to you. But there's a lot out there, and so if you're a practitioner, I get it. It's hard to keep track of what all's out there, and we don't have a lot of time, right? If you're busy doing tax work, you don't have a lot of time to be looking for new technology, let alone applying the technology. So hopefully this can be kind of a shortcut way for you to really learn about the tools and hear right from the people who are responsible for developing them about how they can be helpful in your firms.
Definitely, because it's I think that the next even year to 2 years is going to be transformational for the profession. And now is the time to be schooling yourself on what's out there, big picture, so that you can start thinking through this season's, tax situation, how, and doing that, pre-mortem and post-mortem, maybe like what could we be doing? What can we be cutting out now or making better? And then afterwards, I've heard about these strategies and tools, making a roadmap for yourself on, it's time to stop just talking about it and actually implementing it. So,
Yeah, definitely. And definitely everyone should have a chat GPT or some type of product like that at their disposal. Just use that as a go-to tool just for just simple things right now, because you have to get comfortable with the technology so that as it gets more sophisticated, it advances further, you'll have a good foundational understanding of how to use it.
100%. So is there anything else that we should add to our six-pack overview, John?
I think we've covered a pretty good starting point here. And like as Gaynor mentioned, we've got a couple of small practitioners who are going to do an interview with us. That'll be, I think, very informative for you. And then we've got some good solution providers coming up. So be sure to stay tuned.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions or ideas, you can drop them in the comments or get in touch with John or I, and we'll put our LinkedIn info and email addresses out there too. All right,
Perfect.
good. Great. So I'm looking forward to strengthening our core in the tax firms, not creating a situation where you want to go and grab a six pack at the end of the day, right?
That's
That's
right. Let's get
that's not.
healthy.
Let's get healthy. Let's get our firms into top shape. All
All
right.
righty. Great. Looking
Thank
forward
you.
to it, Gaynor.
All right. Take it easy.